Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Faith and Finance Forum, hosted by the Catholic Finance Association and presented by Aquinas Wealth Advisors. Really excited for our show today. We have Matt Pinto, the accomplished Catholic entrepreneur and influencer and thought leader. He's got a couple new projects that are really exciting that he's working on, and we're thrilled to have Matt with us for the hour. How are you today, Matt?
John, it's good to see your face, good to hear your voice, and I know you're up to some good things as well.
Thanks, man. Let's start with a prayer.
Please.
Father, Son, Holy Ghost, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Our Lady of Sorrows, pray for us. Father, Son, Holy Ghost, amen. Well, Matt, it's good to see you. You're a dear friend of mine. We're both located here in Southeast Pennsylvania. We see each other frequently. For those in our audience that don't know you as well, however, just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what you've done, and help us get to know you a little better.
Great. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to come on with you here, John. I'm a lifelong Catholic, although the wake up didn't really happen until my very early 20s. I had a good friend, really my best friend for many years. He was a non-Catholic Christian. In his love for his friend Matt, he evangelized me because in his tradition, he was taught that I was in spiritual danger. And so he asked questions and I was a deer in headlights, John. I knew very little about my faith, even though I was culturally a Catholic. And so after getting challenged, I decided to learn the faith. And John, over the course of a couple of years, my mind was blown at what I was learning. I couldn't believe the propositions that God existed, that he became one of us in the person of Jesus Christ, and that he established the church. And so I was off to the races. By that point, I had already had a business I had started in college, a little boutique advertising marketing company, and it was going well. I was a few years into it. And at about age 24, 25, I thought, I want to use these skill sets that I've learned in marketing and advertising and public relations for the church. And so I sold the business. I was able to sell this business. And I went to work for Catholic Answers in the very early 1990s. And then from there, I started a series of other Catholic ventures.
And the best known of those, of course, is Ascension Press, where you were at for 22 years as the co-founder or founder and president emeritus today. Tell us a little bit about your run at Ascension Press.
Sure. In 1998, I had written a book, or 1996 and 7, I had written a book that eventually had the title, Did Adam and Eve Have Belly Buttons? And 199 Other Questions from Catholic Teenagers. And I needed a publisher, but because I had come from an advertising and marketing background, I thought, I should do this myself. I had come to learn that publishers, of which I would be one for the next 22 plus years, often spend about 6 months on a book and then it gets moved to the backlist, and understandably so. And I thought, if I publish my own book, I could just work on it all the time and there wouldn't be a backlist. It would always be front list. And so I did that, and the book ended up selling into the hundreds of thousands of copies. I became very well known with Catholic teenagers. And so I needed a name for this book that I would eventually publish. I needed the name of a publisher, and I thought Ascension. It was a pretty name. It was aspirational. It had been in the Catholic lexicon for 2,000 years, so it was a common name. And it didn't hurt that it was a letter A in the front of the alphabet, because that puts you on the top of more than a few lists. So, John, I launched Ascension. I was the sole founder, launched it in 1998, and I had no intentions of a second title. It was intended to be just a one book entity. But then a year or so later, I thought of an idea that was a clever idea, an alliteration on the word rapture, the rapture trap, which the rapture was coming out in movies with Kirk Cameron, I think, and other kind of B-level actors. And so I wanted to debunk that from a Catholic point of view. So I came out with a book on that. I got a great author to write that book. So now I was in earnest a publisher with another outside author. And then, John, another title came and another title came. And 20 years later, hundreds of titles, and we had 70 staff. We became number 1 or number 2 in the world for adult faith formation in the Catholic space.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And even recently, we've been tracking this Bible in a Year podcast, which is the #1 podcast in America. That's a project of Ascension Press, right? That's pretty well known.
It was really one of the last projects before my stepping down. And, for those who were listening, who maybe didn't catch what you said, it became not the #1 religious podcast in the world on iTunes and #3 on Spotify, but the #1 podcast of all categories. So ahead of Ben Shapiro, ahead of Joe Rogan, ahead of the Kardashians, for God's sake. If you're beating the Kardashians, you're doing pretty well. So it really was just a blessing. And, I can only be grateful for the gifts of Father Mike Schmitz and Jeff Cavins and the Ascension staff.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So, Matt, a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs and finance people themselves who have either led businesses to success like Ascension or are working to do so. Give a couple points of advice to our listeners that would love to enjoy the same kind of run that you had at Ascension, taking a great idea as the founder all the way through success and ultimately sale of your company.
Sure. Yeah, and these would be off the top of my head, so that they might be missing in some regards. There are no free lunches, John. It's saddle up, because hard work is ahead of you, but that's okay. Because the second thing I would say, first being hard work, is you have to want it. And we just got a new puppy, so I'm not sure if you can hear him in the background.
It's all good.
So hard work, and secondly, you have to want it. You have to really desire something. John, I got to tell you, the majority of my staff and myself included, we would have done this work for free. And because we loved it, we loved the mission, we believed the faith was true. And so you got to have hunger. You got to really want it. A third would be, you have to have good economic models. If there's no money, there's no mission. And those of us in the church, and I love the church, so anytime I do a little tweak, it's only sent from the posture of loyal son. But those of us who work in the church often are behind the 8 ball right from the word go, because somehow we think that it's dirty to use the principles of the secular world in business. And I would contend, no, it can even be more virtuous, that if you can use the principles of the world, yet still protect your heart, then it's better than if you avoided them at all. If you can enter into them and with God's grace, master them. A third, so that's #3. I'll give you a quick 4 and a quick 5. We were a tithing company. And I don't say that as a boast. I say that as a testament and witness to faith. We, as a company, looked at our profits in a given year, and they were, we ran on tight margins. We never had a layoff in 23 years, but we were always tight. But we still gave on that money. We would give multiple tens of thousands of dollars every year to other Catholic causes. And then #5 is we did an annual consecration, I think most every year for like the past 15 years, to Our Lady. We did the Marian consecration. We started out with de Montfort, and then we moved over to Father Gately's. And so I tell my kids, I say, guys, if we have any temporal blessings, it's because of the financial giving, the consecration, and attempts to live faithfully as Catholics. So those are some things that maybe people can gain from.
That's great advice, Matt. And you're an accomplished author. You've written a lot of books. I'll let you give the exact number. The one I'm probably most familiar with is A Guide to the Passion, 100 Questions about the Passion of Christ, which was, I think it sold over 1 million copies and was #6 on the New York Times religious bestseller list, but you have other books as well. For those of us that are getting started with our Matt Pinto reading, what's a good book to start with? Which are the ones that are kind of high in your mind for people that want to get into your writing a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a teenager, the Did Adam and Eve book is helpful. It's a question and answer book. They can use it in bite size. Some of the questions deal with some sensitive topics of sexual morality. So just make sure they're teenagers, or you just don't do those questions. I had people who tell me often that they would do one question a day with their child on the drive in to school, and the kids used to like it. So if you have a young person, the Adam and Eve book is still very effective. And then if you're an adult, we had a series, Jeff Cavins, myself, and a wonderful woman named Patty Armstrong. We had a series that was called the Amazing Grace series. It's like a Catholic chicken soup for the soul. And they were feel-good stories. They were motivational stories. And we had a chicken soup or an Amazing Grace book for fathers and mothers and couples who were struggling. Other book for those who were suffering. So they were Catholic chicken soup books, and that they'll always have a special place in my heart.
You know, Matt, as your friend and somebody who's walked with you a lot in recent years, I know that as important business is to you and entrepreneurship is, I know that you're at your core a family man, and your wife and your 6 children are very precious to you. What guidance would you give to our listeners and audience members that are struggling with the balance between achieving high levels of professional success while being the kind of husbands, fathers, wives and mothers that they're called to be as well?
Yeah, it's tough, and it's probably my dilemma, as it is a number one dilemma, as it is for tens of millions of mostly men who often work away from the home. Doesn't have to be universally it, but it seems to numerically be more common. But really, my advice would be a little scared, and by that I mean, uh, don't assume that we're all waltzing into heaven, and take very seriously the reality that salvation is real, but judgment is real. And when you have that kind of hanging over you, not in a oppressive or neurotic way, but in a very real way, just like gravity is real, it orients you. And although I was infracting many, many hundreds of times in terms of, over worshiping work and over balancing, moving in the direction of work, I knew where the bread was ultimately buttered, meaning where my salvation would be ultimately realized. And that is making the marriage work, and making sure those kids were directed, balanced in a balanced way, but directed. And so the key word, and I'll close on, is you need to be staggeringly intentional about your marriage and about the raising of these children with a plan, a plan. And the plan needs to be guided ultimately by the stone cold, wonderful, but stone cold reality that salvation is real. The Lord himself says the road that leads to destruction is very wide. The road that leads to life is very narrow, and few find it. I don't know what to do with those words, John, outside of take them seriously. God of the universe himself, Jesus, is saying, and it's narrow. And so, and then one other thing, John, in parenting, I raised my kids with a long leash, not a short leash. We were a yes culture, because I wanted freedom to be a part of their life. And so they knew where the lines and the important lines were, but I said, and it caused my wife more than a few headaches, but really yes to most everything. We said yes to a lot of things. Why? Because I didn't want, because they were being raised like a minister's son because of what I did for a living, like a Protestant minister's son. They were being raised with a father who did religion for a living. I wanted a culture of freedom because I wanted them to pop by the time they were in college. In other words, in the right direction. And so far with our first series of kids, it's playing out just like we had wanted. So freedom, a lot of fun as a family, but very intentional about faith formation.
I love it, Matt. Thanks so much for sharing those insights. So it's a very fascinating time for me to be talking with you because you're at this real moment of transition in your professional life, having sold Ascension in recent years and now starting the Genesis Group, which is a Catholic venture capital firm and incubator focused on supporting new and existing faith-based initiatives. You can find more at CatholicCreation.com. The Genesis Group is your first big post-Ascension venture. Tell us all about it, Matt.
Yeah, John, there are a lot of great ideas out there, maybe ideas that I have that I think are some good ideas that need to be incubated, but there are a lot of great ideas. There's a lot of creativity out there. You and I believe, I think theologically, that any idea, any creation that, John, you do, or that you and your wife Jennifer do, either a child or a new ministry, is a spark of the divine, because God is creator. And so human creation echoes the very creation of God himself. So we Catholics need to be hungry for creation. And we need to be like the parable of the talents, the one with 3 talents and 5 talents who took a risk and didn't bury those talents out of fear, but attempted to give the Lord a good return. And so the Genesis group really, it fits hand in glove with who I am. I loved my Ascension career, and the people there who are there presently, who are going to do just a really wonderful job stewarding it, Jonathan Strait and others, the team over there. But my personality, I think, was meant to spawn many things, and Genesis will give me the chance to either through our own projects or funding, not unlike a Shark Tank, and we call ours Dolphin Tank, because although we're going to give good counsel and vigilant counsel and help steer and guide Catholic entrepreneurs, we're going to do it in a collaborative manner, like a dolphin more than a shark. And so we think it's possible it might be the first Catholic formal VC, venture capital angel investor, that then layers an incubator on top of it. And an incubator in this instance would be counsel, shared services, graphic arts, bookkeeping, etc., to really help many projects start. And John, I think we're going to hit a goal in 10 years of launching ourselves 15 new Catholic ventures, and then who knows how many seed fundings that we can do. And so I'm going to be doing a capital raise, including some of our own funds, my own funds. But there are many Catholics I've already spoken to who would be fascinated with this idea of creating a Catholic entity that spawns Catholic entities. So that's the vision.
Gosh, I love it. And I like the dolphin tank concept too. You know, the dolphin is one of the most intelligent creatures in creation. So that's another plus to that. I like that a lot. So Matt, what type of initiatives do you think ultimately the Genesis Group will fund? I mean, what types of projects do you foresee out in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it could be any number of things. There are certain, like anyone has a non-compete, which I clearly am going to honor. So there are certain things that we can't do for a number of years, and who knows, maybe I'll do them in collaboration with Ascension, because my heart will always be there. So separate from publishing, which we won't do for a while, or maybe at all. Just new creations. Some of the ideas that are coming to us are in technology. Some of them are, there's a prayer ministry, a very clever prayer ministry that someone brought to us that we're exploring. We really haven't formally put out the shingle. The initial ideas, John, are ideas that I've been thinking about for probably 10 years. So I'd have to pull up that list. We have just one clever idea that really can help Catholic schools educate their students better, but in a testing type of way, not in a content type of way. So there are many things. I think I should have been prepared for that question a little bit more. Some of the ideas we want to kind of keep a little bit to ourselves, because we wouldn't mind being first mover on. But there's going to be no shortage of ideas. I'll leave it at that.
Well, hey, Matt, you're an idea guy, so I can't wait to see the fruit of all that. But one concept that is, I think, past the idea stage is the very first Catholic Crypto Conference, which will take place here in November, this coming November 2022 in suburban Philadelphia. Everyone's talking about this Catholic Crypto Conference. Matt, share with us a little bit about what that's all about.
Sure. In a nutshell, the vision, where it came from, is, well, even before I do that, let me define something, because some ears may turn off when they hear the word crypto, and maybe understandably so. When I use the word crypto or cryptocurrency, I'm using the word crypto as an umbrella phrase for something much bigger than cryptocurrencies. It's blockchain, which is a wonderful new technological gift that we now have, the world now has. It's something called Web 3.0, the next evolution of the internet, is all connected to cryptocurrency and blockchain. There's something called the metaverse, for good or for ill, is coming our way, and we Catholics need to know how to respond to it. There's something called NFTs, non-fungible tokens. There's something called decentralized finance and smart contracts. So there's a whole category underneath this word crypto. So anyone who's listening, who's maybe turned off your ears, I'd say, wait a second. We might be talking something on par with the internet itself that came to us in the 1990s. more than a few people are saying that this new blockchain world could be very, very sizable. So the idea came, John, very briefly, is I've been involved in crypto for about 4 years, but after the sale of Ascension, I just, began to have a little more noodle time. And I just did the pure math in my head. If we have another internet size wave coming, the church needs to be there. And hopefully we won't be a half dozen or more years late behind it, like I think we were with the initial internet phase. We were potentially 10 years behind the secular world. So my thought was, well, marry my first love, which is the faith, with a new budding reality known as crypto, blockchain, Web3. And we got to do a conference. We got to let that conversation begin. And so I brought together between 25 and 30 technologists, crypto experts, and finance experts, with Catholic theologians, philosophers, and pastoral ministers, those who are doing the work in the field. And for 2 days, more than 50 seminars, 50 breakout seminar sessions and keynotes. We're going to cover a lot of ground. We got 5 tracks, and it's going to be quite a good 2 days.
I can't wait myself. Correct me if I'm wrong. The dates are 17th and 18th, or is it 18th and 19th of November?
17th and 18th of November, Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. And although you'll probably give out the website, CatholicCryptoConference.com.
Okay, this is going to be great. Everyone's got to get out to this conference. It's going to be it's going to be great. We're just really excited about it. One of the angles or areas of focus for the Catholic Crypto Conference, I know, is challenging mass censorship, cancel culture, some of these concerning phenomena that we're tracking. Drill down on that a little bit, Matt. How does crypto and blockchain and these emerging technologies present an opportunity to confront disturbing things like cancel culture, mass censorship, et cetera?
Yeah. Right now, John, if you or I say something wrong and you post this on YouTube, it's not unthinkable that you could get a thumbs down, and that video could be blocked because you said something against the common wisdom or the mood of certain people in our culture. So you would call Twitter has an authority over top of it. Facebook has an authority giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down to what you and I say. In this blockchain world, there's something called distributed ledgers and distributed platforms, where technically, John, no one owns it. The platform is built, and then it's distributed among content creators who hold up the network with their own computing power. And the quick analogy that I've come up with is, John, let's say you wanted to do a trust fall. John Knowles was at a picnic, and so we convince you to get on a picnic table, and we convince you that 6 of us are going to catch you, John, as you do a trust fall. Well, I could quickly pull away my hands and tell those 5 other people to pull away our hands because they're within proximity of me. They can hear my voice say, pull your hands away. And then John falls to the ground. But what if there were 30,000 people holding up that net, and they didn't know who the other 30,000 were? Well, they couldn't communicate with each other to pull away the net, so John Knowles could fall safely. This is what a distributed network is, where the people holding up the network don't know who everyone else is. The code sits on their computer and holds up the network, so there's no single point of failure. In fact, in the case of Bitcoin, there is no Bitcoin corporation. It was code that was released into the world, kind of like me sneezing into the world, and it dissipates. And you have something like 40 or 50,000 computers worldwide who don't know who the others are. There is a small group who does, but that's just a small group who know each other, but not the distributed network. They don't know who the rest of the 40,000 are. So that holds up the network. There is no single point of failure, and that's why you can create a new Twitter or a new Facebook or a new YouTube on a distributed network that can't cancel. Now, with that can come some evil things, of course, but this can fight against censorship, and we can create networks where the Catholic voice can always get out.
I like it a lot. So, there's some emerging technologies that the church's position on it is obviously one of concern and challenge. Cloning, for instance, comes to mind. That's an emerging technology that the church has been very clear, this is evil, this is wrong, this is something that we can't allow. What's the Catholic Church's instinctual reaction to the rise of blockchain technology do you think, Matt? Is it considered good, bad, somewhere in between? Is there an instinctual reaction from the church on this?
Sure. I actually think, John, in the clarification, you're certainly right when we speak of cloning in using it in a human sense and maybe even with animals, um, but not necessarily with tomatoes. And so cloning in itself, from the word go, is not necessarily evil. I would guess that the Catholic ethicists would say. So we would say the same with pretty much any technology. Maybe the only one that I think maybe from the word go would be a problem. Problem uh, would be nuclear bombs, but nuclear power is not the problem. That powers cities. So it depends on the manifestation and the use, but nuclear energy in itself is not bad. Necessarily cloning might not be from the word go. So I would say all the more with something more benign like blockchain, benign in its evil uses, but it could be used for, you could blockchain, pornographic content, and maybe it becomes immutable and it stays up there and it can't be taken down. So I think the church would say that it's either morally neutral or good. Even if it's used for evil, that idea is still a little bit of a spark of the divine, the essence of an idea. So I don't think the church would have a position other than what it would on most every other technology, that it's a human creation, that we want to have a seat at the table to steer it in the direction of good, but we shouldn't stifle the creation.
And other than the aforementioned benefits of perhaps being a challenge to cancel culture and censorship and that kind of thing, what opportunities does blockchain present to the church? I mean, how could it further the church's mission?
Yeah, and my mind's getting blown almost on a weekly or every other week basis as I start to interview Catholics, but also non-Catholics in this field, and I'm hearing about different use cases. And it's even hard for my brain to keep up with them, even though I'm learning. I'm still new to this. I'm mostly the one just putting these persons together versus drilling down at a deep level. Um, so, here's one simple use, and someone's going to run with this, and that is, you know, I was at a church not too long ago, within the past month, and I found, someone asked me to go get a cart, and I got the cart from the room this person pointed to, and I noticed in that same room where I got the cart that the church records of that parish, the baptismal records and marriage records and confirmation records, were in hard copy form. And I shuddered to think, well, what happens if a fire happens? Because these records are vitally important, because sometimes you can't have another sacrament until you have a precursor sacrament. And so that alone needs to be put on a blockchain. And so these records become accessible by the church only, but they become immutable. They become locked down because the blockchain has that power of doing that. And so that's just one. But John, I think once we start to really explore things, I think we're going to find many, many different use cases.
I think I may have been with you in that visit to the church basement that you referenced, which is kind of interesting. So, do you think Catholic leaders are aware of this and need to be attentive to it? I mean, what's the draw, I guess, for Catholic leaders in the clergy and the laity to be more interested in this?
Yeah, I would say the Catholic clergy would be on par with most everyone else, which would be a small percentage, 2 to 3% probably of the general public is slightly more aware than the phrases Bitcoin and Ethereum and blockchain. They've heard those phrases, but 97% of people have only heard those phrases, and only probably 2 to 3% have began to drill down on them. So it's still a very small group. Maybe it's a little bit more than that, but not much more. So we have our work cut out for us. We're getting the message out through interviews like this and other things. We just did a mailing to all 400 or 390 bishops. But we might be too far ahead. We might be a few years ahead. And but John, I got to tell you, we're shooting for 400 people. That's the size of the facility. The Sheraton Valley Forge only allows for 400 people, but that was okay with me because that's a serious number. Frankly, John, if we end up this first year having 100 people beginning this conversation, I think it'll be worth it. I'll personally take a hit there, and I hope that's not the case. But I'm okay with that at the end of the day, because I think this is a conversation that needs to get started, and nothing ventured, nothing gained. You win some, you lose some, but we're absolutely gonna try and win. I would humbly ask anyone who's watching or listening to please consider attending. We're getting good traction early. And then if you're in a position where you own a company, or you have personal means, we would love the sponsorship help. We need it. We're doing well with sponsorship, but we're only about halfway there. So we need your help if you can.
Yes, please do help at CatholicCryptoConference.com. Matt, in the history of the rise of blockchain, 2009, ironically, if you recall, the first Bitcoin release was the Genesis block.
Yeah.
Ironically, considering the name of your venture firm. But where do you think, in I guess the history of the evolution of this technology, do you think the Catholic Crypto Conference is coming a little late, a little earlier, at just the right time? You know, a little more than a decade since the rise of the phenomenon in the first place.
So John, good question. The people I hear and listen to, and I listen to a lot of YouTube videos in crypto. There's so many videos out there right now. It's developing supposedly at twice the pace of the internet. Now, granted, we have the power of the internet to fuel that twice as fast, whereas we didn't have the internet to fuel the internet, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But it is twice as fast as the adoption of the internet itself, crypto is, the crypto blockchain world. And so it's because of that, though, that people, despite that, people say that we are barely in the first out of the first inning of a 9-inning baseball game. John, I'm pretty sure if I were to say to you in 1998 that, man, I feel like I'm already behind, that the internet has already passed us. Well, you and I are sitting here in the year 2022, and inventions are still coming our way through these new technologies. You and I would have been at the first inning of the first out 4 years into the crypto or the internet space back in the late 90s. And so I think we're in the very beginning. We might be a little bit ahead of, and a lot of cognitive dissonance is taking place in the part of the Catholic mind. I think the next bull run for crypto, which many believe is probably about 1.5 to 2 years away, the awareness is going to be much more. It's probably going to be 3 to 5 times more what it is right now. But I think the timing is actually ideal. It gets people about a year or two before the next bull run to really learn, educate, and make maybe even personal financial decisions in that regard. And I think it's ideal because it allows Catholic ministries a chance to be early in the game. Oh, if we could turn back the clocks of time to 1995 through 1999 with Catholic minds, and put our minds to what we could have used the internet for, we would be much further along than I think we are right now.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see just the past year in the the whole crypto world. I mean, there's been a lot of strong signs, i.e., nations adopting Bitcoin as currency. I remember Mayor Adams in New York City took his paycheck, his first paycheck with crypto or Bitcoin. You've seen Catholic dioceses begin to accept donations, via cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin. Goldman Sachs and other big financial institutions have entire crypto divisions now. So I mean, there is a sense of permanence. There is a sense of kind of a widespread adoption. But at the same time, the valuation of Bitcoin, especially, has gone down this year considerably. We're kind of at a low point right now. What's your general observation or take on the overall landscape for crypto right now, Matt?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple things. Look at some of the evidences, the amount of venture funding that's coming into the crypto space. There's evidently some sort of brain drain that's happening in Silicon Valley of people moving into crypto. When I was at Bitcoin conference the last 2 years and Consensus conference, which is for all the other projects, I was elbowing my son and my nephew because you're in the room with serious people, captains of industry, names you know. And so I have to have a certain trust that collective wisdom is increasing dramatically here. John, the reason for the dip is pretty explainable. And I won't belabor this, but basically every 4 years, there is something called the halving, the cutting in half of the Bitcoin mining rewards. So when you put that computing power on solving the problems and holding up the network, you get rewarded in Bitcoin for using that computing power. Well, every 4 years, the reward is cut in half. And when it's cut in half, the market drops about 80, 85%. And then about a year and a half later, it then rockets. And the highs or even the lows of the next run are usually higher than the previous run's highs. And so we're just happen to be in that current dip, which is actually a great time to start getting involved, because so far we've had 3 or 4 exact replicas of what happens in that 4-year halving cycle. And then the rest of the market follows Bitcoin. Although that's starting to change because the use cases of the other cryptos and technologies are starting to level things out. And I'll just close with this final point. If you and I were discussing electricity in New York City in 1890, and you were to say to me, Matt, this electricity thing, I think it's going to be pretty big. But I would start pointing out to you, well, look at this failure here. And didn't that building go on fire over there? And the power outages happen all the time. Well, yeah, because you're at the beginning of electricity. Well, this is probably what we're seeing here. And that it's working these things out. And John, we actually, those in the industry do want regulation. We want reasonable regulation, but we do want regulation. And as soon as regulation comes, it'll start to stabilize more.
Yeah. Expound on that a little bit too, because I mean, I think that's one of the concerns that I hear from crypto skeptics is, okay, so it's having a decent run right now in the first decade or decade and a half, but what happens when the government gets involved and blows it up? What would you say to them?
Well, I mean, my sense is that there are many people in government and there are many influencers influencing government who say, are you foolish? This is America's chance again to make sure that we don't lose our place in this world. If you don't do it, other countries are going to do it. So I actually think, John, that it's more likely at this point, maybe a year and a half ago, we should have been really nervous, but it's getting more likely that the legislation is going to be informed legislation. So I'm actually pretty hopeful on that. I think people see that this is a technological change that's coming. And just like we shouldn't have stifled the internet, which I think for the most part we did not do in the beginning years, we let the free market, even though there are some abuses that happen, we let the free market figure that out and run with it. So even with regulation and stability, you're going to have new companies coming up all the time. Like who could have thought of a Spotify, 10 years ago? And instead of me buying my songs from iTunes, I now pay $15 a month and I got all the songs I want. Well, that's a new creation. Those new creations are going to keep on coming. And so even though we're getting dramatic runs in the first 10 years of these Ethereum and Bitcoin and others, and they'll stable out, and we want them to stable out, you're going to have newcomers coming all the time with new ideas. And, just the new ideas that I've learned in the past year are amazing. And I think we're in our beginning days.
Yeah, indeed. So, Matt, I did a informal survey of some smart friends of mine, a few of them mutual friends of ours actually, this week, and I asked them to define Web 3.0. I was surprised how many of our smart mutual friends weren't exactly sure what that is. Define Web 3.0 and why you're interested in it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the original promise of the internet, I think I'm maybe at least 6 to 10 years older than you. I think, John, maybe, but every bit of that. But when I was in the internet days, in the first, just using it, I wasn't thinking about it. I was just using it. But I remember in the back of my mind hearing that the internet was going to offer the promise of an equal playing field. Everyone can be their own, publisher. Everyone can be their own broadcaster. And but what happens in an economic system is over time, smart people and smart money consolidate that now into the 6 or 5 big companies of Google and YouTube and Twitter. Well, what Web3 allows is really a true decentralization. Remember that trust fall of 6 people catching John versus 40,000 people. When you have distributed networks, they become potentially unstoppable once they're created. And so I think that this offers one characteristic of Web3 is that it offers a decentralization ability. And with decentralization, John, also comes incentive to create. So many people who are starting to philosophize about Web3 are saying that it's almost like open source code when you have open source computer code and allow everyone to use your code, because of that open source, more products are created because everyone's using the good code to launch their next project. In a Web3 distributed world, you'll probably have more creation of more ideas at a greater speed. So that's one thing. And then other opportunities that I heard is that it should actually, in a human justice way, a social justice way, because it's distributed, it will help more disenfranchised persons with on-ramps into, I forget how someone said how that happens, but there's a video I watched recently where it laid out this logic, and I thought, oh, that makes sense. So Web3 is a more open source, egalitarian, participatory building on all the technologies we presently have in Web 2 that need not go away, but now be put on these more open source platforms. That's about the best I can do right now.
You know, Matt, just listening to you talk about Web 3.0, it almost kind of goes back to your personal professional journey and the forming of Ascension Press, the desire to be able to more, I guess, in a democratic way, publish content and get it out there more quickly and more and less expensively for the authors and the content creators. I mean, is that kind of a theme for you? Is that part of the reason you think you're excited? This is just, kind of something you've always felt called to?
No, I don't think so. And one of the casualties, John, of being busy, they say you should work much more on your business than in your business.
Mm-hmm.
I think at times, too many times over the years, I was working in the business and less philosophizing more about on your business. So I think that would have been a fruit, maybe, had I spent more time. And now that I get older and learn from past mistakes, I'm going to be clearly, thinking more strategically and at a higher level. We did a lot of that at Ascension, but no, I wish that could be the case, that I was thinking that in that particular instance, but no, I don't think so. I think we did it in other regards, but maybe not in that instance in particular. But it does seem, though, to be how it played out.
Matt, do you think that the Catholic Crypto Conference will fill a little bit of a void in our Catholic ecosystem of Catholic business people and intellectuals and activists that are just interested in technology and see opportunities for the church to become to develop greater mastery in technology, in fintech and also non-financial technology? Is that part of what you're trying to do with the Catholic Crypto Conference? Is get people that are enthusiastic about the synthesis of the church and the world of technology? Is that part of the goal here, do you think?
It is, John. I had 3 goals, and forgive me if I said these earlier because I've been doing a lot of interviews, so I forget what I've said where. But there were 3 goals in the conference. The first was offensive, the second was defensive, and then the third is what you're alluding to. Offensive means church, fellow laborers in the vineyard. Is there something powerful here that we can use for the common good and the sake of the gospel? For your ministry, all ministries, is there something good here that we can use? Point 1, goal number 1. Goal number 2, defensive. We gotta mitigate the misuses. The church needs to have a seat at the table. But the third goal, you're really nailing it, and that is to begin to unearth from the crypto world and the broader technology world who strong believing Catholics are, and to get us together. So I do have a follow-up project that's immediately connected to the conference. I'm going to hold a little bit on that for now, if you don't mind, but it involves getting these common minds together in some non-intrusive way, wherein they can begin to network with each other, maybe hire each other, maybe share certain knowledges that is non-proprietary, and really begin to, where 2 or more are gathered, in a different sense. They can 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4, it equals 5. They can get together and create greater realities. So yeah, you nailed it with that question. That is one of the goals of the conference.
Talk to us about NFT or smart contracts. What does that mean?
Yeah, NFTs, John, evidently it was the word of the year, whoever designates word of the year. Maybe there's several groups. Last year, in the year 2021, it was the word of the year. And an NFT is a non-fungible token, meaning it's distinct. Every time a new NFT is minted, it's one of a kind. And its ownership can be verified and locked and immutable. And you can prove ownership. John, the ramifications of an NFT world and digital assets is dramatic. Some are saying that connected to NFTs is this word tokenization, where things can become tokenized. For example, you and Jennifer own your home in Pennsylvania. Well, what if you wanted to sell 15% of your home? Well, you tokenize your home, you get an appraiser to put a value on it in tokenization, and you literally can sell part of that equity. You can do something with it. So NFTs are a way of capturing intellectual property, just material property in general. But John, the first wave is always the craziest. And you have some NFTs that have sold into the tens of millions, like Jack Dorsey from Twitter. He sold his first tweet for a few $1 million because someone thought that might be valuable. And maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. But the key word, though, for NFTs and the current evolution is utility. For example, let's say you, John Knowles, you buy a new Nike sneaker from Modell's or from Dick's Sporting Goods. Well, that sneaker now comes as an NFT, not just a sneaker, but they give you an NFT. And that NFT now allows you entree into Boston Celtics games. Every 50th shoe becomes an NFT and gives you entree into, it has utility. And so there's all different types of applications that people are conceiving. And I'll just close with this little anecdote. So my son number 3 is, son number 1 and son number 3 are into NFT projects. One has a day job, one is in college. And son number 3, the one in college, he spent most of the past summer, the one that we just came out of, up in his room, and he's an entrepreneurial guy. He built another very clever business that he began at age 13. But my wife said to me, is he wasting his time upstairs? He's 8-10 hours a day working on NFTs with a small group of a half dozen other young guys. And I said, no, Marianne. I said, from all that I'm hearing, he's in the 100th of 1 percentile who's developing a knowledge. And my son himself said to me, he said, Dad, it's almost every day that we're thinking of new ideas of new problems in this world that we're solving. And so these are the very people, because NFTs are going to be a part of our world, who are solving the problem. These are the Microsofts and the Steve Jobs in the garage who are thinking about the solutions of the future. So NFTs are here. Smart contracts, in a single nutshell, are contracts that are written with strategy by lawyers or by entrepreneurs that are then written, and they bring about certain actions just by their own existence. I know you're an attorney, but someone gave an example like this. Like, let's say you rent a property to a couple. If they don't pay their rent, a smart contract kicks into place and it locks the door automatically. It's a contract. Now that's a bad example, unfortunate example, but there's a whole host of contracts that pay out dividends when certain things are met. They enact themselves. They're contracts that work on their own behalf and on behalf of the parties, and they get realized or actualized when certain parameters are met. So there's an entire world happening right now of contracts being created that becomes self-governing. And there's many other things that are happening as well connected with that. Something called, and we don't have to go into this, called a DAO, a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. And what these are, John, are massive smart contracts written to govern businesses or communities. And the purpose of these ventures that are getting started is to put themselves out of business, meaning John Knowles and Matt Pinto start a venture, but we create it as a DAO and we write the guidelines and everything. And then when it hits a certain point, it becomes owned by the community. People are thinking that literally towns are going to be governed by smart contracts on certain aspects of town governance. And so many clever things that ultimately will have humans above them because we're the ones created them, but it'll cut a lot of friction out and will create a lot of efficiencies from things that are inefficient.
Matt, as we start to wind our time down together, I do want to, just maximize the scope and the sharing of information about the conference itself. Question one, let's say I'm very new to all this. I'm just a normal person. Maybe I have a 401k or whatever, but I don't really know much at all about blockchain, crypto, etc. Is the Catholic Crypto Conference still for me?
Yeah. And remember, yes, the answer is yes. And remember, the word crypto is much bigger than just the investment component, although these are the Microsofts of the future. Like, just for example, John, I think there are about 50 companies out there right now in the crypto space that are worth $1 billion or more. And 97% of people haven't heard but one or two of them. And so it's already happening. It's very big, and they will be the companies of the future in many regards. But John, to answer your question more specifically, we have 5 tracks. We have a finance track for those of you in the Catholic Finance Association and those who are intrigued with finance in general. But we have a beginner's track. And all the presentations in the beginning track over those 2 days are for beginners. Intro to cryptocurrency, intro to blockchain, and they're only half-hour talks. So they're not going to be long and where your eyes are glossing over. So intro to NFTs, intro to Web3, intro to the metaverse, intro to decentralized finance, and like 2 or 3 other. So it's absolutely for beginners. I'm still beginning, although I'm conversant. Like, if I were conversant in Spanish, I'm getting conversant. I still consider myself in the beginning days.
And conversely, let's say that I'm an early adopter of Bitcoin and Ethereum and the whole suite of cryptocurrency out there. I've been in it a long time. I've made some money. I'm big time into it. What opportunities are there for me at the Catholic Crypto Conference?
Yeah, and one of my speakers, who was a higher end speaker, he warned me about this because he said, "No, make sure there's stuff there for us." And so I heard him, and there's stuff there for him and those of his ilk. So we have some great thinkers at the conference. We're going to have panels on the future of finance. We're going to have a panel on ESG, the whole ESG compliance issues. And these are going to be moderated by some good, solid hitters, and the panelists are going to be real solid citizens. We have some great names in the conference, well known in the crypto world, well known in the finance world, and well known in the Catholic world. So I think there's going to be plenty of meat. As I shared, maybe with you, maybe it was another interview, that we have, I think, 52 total learning opportunities, 5 different tracks over 2 days. So I think the bigger problem is going to be, which of the talks do I go to versus which is there enough there for me? I think every person is going to struggle with 2 and 3 and maybe 4 options every time with what they want to go to.
Yeah, it does sound really exciting. I'm curious, is part of the goal to build an ongoing community that lives on past the conference of people that have met and traded ideas and stay in touch throughout the year, perhaps till the next Catholic Crypto Conference? Is that part of the goal too?
Absolutely. Absolutely. To form a community where it's crypto and new technology focused. And then, John, one of the things I and the people with whom I'm working are exploring is maybe we do a couple of one-day regional conferences throughout the country. And next year, we're already choosing where we'll be next year. We probably will be in Denver or Austin. And so these one-day conferences enable us to hit other parts of the country. It won't be as vibrant, but it'll still be very fruitful, especially for networking.
So this year's attendees, they really get the opportunity to be on the ground floor of something very exciting that's going to continue on for years and years to come. I mean, this is a chance to be a founder in a way, right?
It is. I was part of 30 years ago. I think it was about 30 years ago. I was one of the first 50 people at the Catholic Marketing Network conference, and I always had a sense of satisfaction and a little bit of pride. I remember we were in Chicago. It was that Hope Airport attached to the hotel attached to the airport, and I remember many of the people in the room. So yeah, I think you're going to kind of feel pretty cool that I was at the first Catholic crypto conference. And remember, the word crypto is the broader definition.
Yeah, very important. Matt, something that you're trying to work into the Catholic Crypto Conference, and this really resonates with me in some of the organizations that I've served and been involved with, like, Legatus, Catholic Finance Association, and others. Ultimately we're business organizations, but we're Catholic in identity. We're a group of faith-based, practicing Catholics whose ultimate objective is to grow in their faith and become citizens of heaven one day. The Catholic Crypto Conference is a technology conference, and we talked about so many deep and fascinating technology topics in this conversation. Even we'll have much more at the conference itself. But how do you maintain the Catholic identity and the faith-based component of a technology conference like that? Will you speak to that balance?
Yeah, yeah, and please don't hear a boast in this because it's not just me, but well, I'm only going to have Catholic content that is strong and good and meaty because I love the faith and it is what it is. Now we will have non-Catholic presenters. I can see someone finding something that some person that they don't like or whatever, but we need content experts, whether they're Catholic or not. And especially in this first year, I don't know who they are yet. So I went with good, solid voices. So we have about a third of our speakers are non-Catholic, but they're speaking on technology issues more than they're not really touching on faith issues. But John, we're going to have mass twice a day in the morning and in the afternoon on both days. I'm going to be meeting with my own archdiocese to really explore whether we can have adoration throughout the conference. But also some of the topics, we have a certain number of topics of the 52 that are just pure Catholic topics that have nothing to do with technology. For example, Dr. Andrew Abella from Catholic University of America is going to be speaking on virtue in business and the need for virtue. We have someone who's going to be speaking on tithing. I wanted that in there. We're going to be someone speaking on the Sabbath. Why the Sabbath? Because those of us who are hard driving and we forget that we're called to Sabbath rest. And I felt that was needed for myself and needed for the industry. And a number of the topics, John, about 5% of the topics are purely Catholic topics that have nothing to do with technology at all, but I wanted them there. About 25% of the topics are Catholicism and technology merged together. But about 65 or so percent of the topics are pure technology topics. But Catholicism is absolutely going to be present, aggressively so.
Yeah, we're going to grow in our faith while growing in our knowledge of technology around blockchain, crypto, and all the other interesting things we've talked about. This is the CatholicCryptoConference.com. All of our listeners and viewers to the show, please visit it to learn more. It's a really solid website. There's a lot of good information on it. You can register for the conference as an attendee. You can sponsor the conference, and I know there's a lot of attractive sponsorship opportunities still available. Many of them have been claimed, but many are still available if you have a business or you're just interested in coming in at that level. The dates are November 17th and 18th here in suburban Philadelphia, and it's going to be a great show. I know I'm looking forward to it, and a lot of other people are too. Matt, any closing thoughts related to the conference itself that you'd like to leave us with?
Sure. I would say to those who are working in Catholic ministry, take a leap of faith. Think outside of the box. Let's see if we can be a few steps ahead of where the culture is or where it's going. So take a little bit of a leap of faith. There are far worse investments, I think, that you can make than the reasonably inexpensive ability to come to this conference. That would be one. The second, I know it sounds cliche, but I believe, and so I'm going to ask, I would love for people to have a little sticky note that says, pray for the CCC, the Catholic Crypto Conference. Pray for it. We would love to have that, love to have that spiritual protection. And we would love to have a successful first year. And I believe we need to cover it with prayer. So I'll leave it at that.
Matt, I'm just curious on a personal level, are you feeling a comparable level of excitement around the Genesis group and the Catholic Crypto Conference and the new ideas you're developing that you did at the dawn of Ascension Press? Do you kind of feel that same old familiar feeling, or is it different this time?
I think it's actually more, and don't hear any diminishment. Ascension was unbelievable. I mean, oh my goodness, if everyone would get to live the life that I was able to live over the past 23 years of reaching people and providing livings for about 100 people all told over those years. But no, I think when you're mature, you see more clearly. When you're young and you're just kind of surviving, you're so close to it that you almost don't enjoy it. It's a certain sense, it's like the difference between your grandchildren, where you just almost pure enjoyment, and your children who you love and enjoy, but you're in the fight at the time. So I think metaphorically, I'm more kind of at the grandchildren phase where you have wisdom and you have some means and ability, and you have a network and connections to be able to do things more efficiently. John, this is why I say, with not a boast at all, even the slightest, I think Genesis is going to start 15 new Catholic ventures in the next 10 years, ministries that the church is going to be blessed by and that people are going to like, and let alone the more seed funding of other ideas that could be into the dozens. So I actually think, John, there's a more excitement because you're a little bit freer of mind. You have more experience. It's almost like someone who's learned how to play the piano. It's more enjoyable when you have to play versus just kind of learning chopsticks. And so now we can play the piano and we're enjoying it more.
I love it. Well, Matt, I'm always so impressed with just your enthusiasm, your energy, your love of entrepreneurship, your love of the church and our country. And I have no doubt the Genesis Group and the Catholic Crypto Conference will be very successful. Matt, other than going to the Catholic Crypto Conference today and registering, how can our audience connect with you? Are you out on social media or other websites where they can continue the conversation with you?
Sure. You can reach me at emails, which are on the website, and also on Twitter at Matt Pinto, although, John, I'm embarrassed. I had the team of staff that have did that for all those years. And we have a Twitter with the crypto conference as well that I'm actually just learning. So it's embarrassing in some regards, but I'm taking my own recommended medicine, and I'm getting even more tech savvy. I like tech. It's just I fortunately had a team who was able to carry that out, but I'm doing it now. So at Matt Pinto at Twitter on Twitter, and through various emails connected with the conference. You can find those emails on the website.
All right, sounds great. Well, Matt, thanks so much for your time today. You're a busy man. We appreciate you being with us for the hour. This has been the Faith and Finance Forum, hosted by the Catholic Finance Association and presented by Aquinas Wealth Advisors. We'll see you next time, folks. God bless.